Moving on to the fourth session, we have Dr. Shakuntala Chopade ma'am, Assistant Professor, Department of Chemistry, Pune College of Pharmacy. Ma'am has completed her post-graduation and PhD and has a total of 6 years of academic experience. She has 12 publications and one book chapter in national and international journals. She has also presented research paper in 5 national and international conferences, including ICT Mumbai, IPC Mysore. She has received Young Researcher Award from Grapes Charitable Trust. I request ma'am to take over the session.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the introduction. Today we have with us Dr. Anjali Sunil Munkar, MBBS, MS, OBG. Anjali ma'am have 10 years of teaching experience. She is assessor of Preservation, Oncofertility, Quality and Accreditation Institute, trained as assessor for accreditation standard for assisted reproductive technology, ART centers. She has a wide experience. From 5th May 2008, she joined as a senior resident in Department of OBG, KMC Manipal. From July 2008 to October 2013, she has worked as an assistant professor in the Department of OBG. From October 2013 till date, she is working as an associate professor in OBG KMC Manipal. On her credit, she have 20 publications. She awarded 3rd place for poster on pap smear in Women's Health Education Awareness on Cervical Cancer on November 2005. She also presented papers in the conferences such as Study of Thromboprophylaxis in Women with Previous Pregnancy Loss, and presented posters such as a case of preeclampsia presenting in usual way in AICOG 2009 Jaipur. She also conducted workshop for PhD student for better publication in 2019, and she have received Excellence in Teaching Award in the year 2017-18 during KMC College Day celebration. With this brief introduction, I will request Dr. Anjali ma'am to kindly take over the session. Thank you, ma'am.
Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the introduction, madam. It was very nice of you. And I take this opportunity to thank all of you for inviting me for this session. I'm so pleased to be here. Shall I share my screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Is the screen seen?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, greetings from Manipal. I'm working as associate professor in the Department of Reproductive Medicine and Surgery. And my basic specialty is obstetrics and gynecology, and my super specialty in reproductive medicine and surgery. So I'll be telling few things or sharing few things about the gynecological drugs, the common gynecological drugs that are used, and especially what are the problems that can be there whenever we are using these kind of drugs. So I will be mainly concentrating on the gynecological drugs basically, and less on obstetrics, because I thought maybe obstetrics is quite common, and you all know about the drugs that the changes that can happen in a pregnant patient. So I am mostly concentrating on the drugs which are used in gynecological practice. So obstetrics and gynecology, obstetrics deals with pregnant patients and gynecology deals with non-pregnant patients. So those which are the drugs which are commonly used in the gynecological practice, I will be teaching or I'll be talking about. So there are certain things that are slightly different from a routine pharmacotherapy in a patient who's not in women. So basically, men and women almost have the same pharmacodynamics and pharmacokinetics. However, there are certain places wherein we need to concentrate on whenever we are using certain drugs in gynecological practice. Also, briefly, I will touch on the pregnant and the pregnant pharmacotherapy and non-pregnant because we need to have a basic understanding before we go ahead and treat the patient. And what are the problems of obstetrics and pharmacotherapy? What problems can be encountered and common in practice? There are a few general considerations, and also there are certain medical considerations that I will be dealing with. So what is the importance of pharmacotherapy in obstetrics and gynecology? So basically, when it is obstetrics dealing with pregnant patients, pregnant women, so there is two people that we will be handling. So it is the mother as well as the baby. So whenever we are using drugs in obstetrics, we use very less amount of drugs, and whenever we are using, we have to think of what these drugs do to the pregnant woman, also to the fetus. Not only that, there is change in metabolism in pregnant patients. So there will be altered metabolism. It may be because of increased vomiting, because of whatever the patient may be taking, may not be the dosage may not be enough because she is vomiting. The metabolism is increased, so it is metabolized in the liver, and more metabolism occurs and excretion also occurs. So the drug dosage may have to be increased in obstetric patients. So especially when we are dealing with women who are on CNS medications like the drugs used for psychotherapy, or the drugs that are used in as an anti-epileptic medication. So whenever we are dealing with these kind of patients, it is very important for us to know the pharmacodynamics that is happening in the pregnant women. Also in gynecology, there are certain interactions that can happen. So in a non-pregnant patient as well, and it is very important for us to have a good idea about the patient before we go ahead and treat these patients. So a broad idea of these patients is very, very important. Are you all there with me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, thanks. So the FDA classification, you all know regarding the FDA classification, A, B, C, D, and X. A is when it has been, the drugs have been tried in randomized controlled trial and has been found to be very safe in pregnancy. And B is the drugs which are tried, but it has been found to be safe in animals, but not in human beings. C is the drugs which are found to be having some problem in animal studies. However, humans, it has not been tried. Benefits outweigh the risk whenever using category C drugs. And category D drugs are obviously having problem whenever used in animal studies, and definitely may cause problem whenever used in human beings, especially pregnant women. And these again benefits, if you have to use this drug, then definitely go ahead and use. However, there are risks associated. X is totally not to be used. These are all teratogenic drugs. So most of the drugs that are used in obstetrics and gynecology belong to C and D. So whenever we are using, they're mostly multivitamins which belong to category B. Okay, none are category A, it is category B, and maybe insulin and heparin, which are mostly metabolized in the placenta, because placenta also acts as an metabolic unit, and majority of these drugs do not go to the placenta, so through the placenta and to the fetus, and these are belonging to category A. But majority of the antibiotics that we use in pregnancy are all belonging to category C. So hence, whenever we are using any kind of medication in pregnancy, we think twice whether it is really required, and only then we go ahead and use. It may be the drugs which are used for common cold, or it may be the drugs like antibiotics we're using in case of sepsis. So we, especially in first trimester, whenever we are using, we have to think twice. Okay, so unless it is really required, unless it is going to be really beneficial for the patient, and the problems which are caused because of the drugs can be neglected and life and death situation occurs, then maybe we go ahead and use, forgetting that she is pregnant, not thinking much about the drug causing effect on the fetus. So this is what I was telling. The pharmacokinetics are different. Absorption, distribution, metabolism, excretion is all altered in pregnancy, and mechanism of action and safety profile is very important. Formulation, inert agents, and taste. All these things are very important when we are using the drugs in case of pregnancy. So we know that majority of the drugs are not to be used. Majority only, like we use multivitamins. Then there are few drugs which are used for medical conditions, like if there is diabetes, if there is hypertension, if the mother is suffering from epilepsy, if the mother is having cardiac disease, then in those situations we have to use, because it is important for the mother. So in those situations we do go ahead and give the drug, explaining the patient the possible teratogenic effect, if at all, if there is any. So whenever we are using any medication in women, we always have to think of pregnancy, especially when they are in reproductive age group. So reproductive age group starts from menarche to menopause. During this period, unless the woman is very sure that she's not pregnant and has been using a very effective contraceptive method, then probably we may go ahead and give the medication. Otherwise, we usually think twice, and we usually rule out that she is not pregnant before we go ahead and give any medication in a woman, especially when majority of the women come to gynecological OPD either with any kind of abnormal vaginal discharge, or they may be having, most often having, some kind of menstrual irregularities. So it is very important that we rule out pregnancy, because a woman who's normally menstruating may be having slightly reduced bleeding only, and she might have neglected, and actually she may be pregnant. So it's very important to rule out pregnancy whenever a woman comes in the reproductive age group, and before we go ahead and treat her with any kind of medication. Because the medications may be teratogenic. So not all of them, but definitely some of them are teratogenic. So in case she is pregnant and then we happen to use these medication, then definitely ongoing pregnancy is not advised, and we may have to terminate that pregnancy. So instead of having all those problems, it is always better to rule out pregnancy. The use of hormones, okay, very commonly many variety of hormones are being used, and their effects on possible pregnancy. We have to think the oral contraceptive pills, the drugs used for postponement, drugs that are used in infertility practice. So all these things will have an effect in case a woman is pregnant. So very often we find that woman has been using oral contraceptive pills, like any of those combined pills that are being used with estrogen and progesterone. Either she may be using oral contraceptive pill as for contraception, or she may be using it to regularize her menstrual cycle. She may be using oral contraceptive pill for polycystic ovarian syndrome. She may be using oral contraceptive pill for endometriosis. So any of the conditions, there may be a possible variety of reasons why a woman may be on oral contraceptive pills. So very often, in case she misses any of the pill, there may be especially in the first 1 week, there may be possibility of ovulation and she may become pregnant. So using oral contraceptive pill and the patient becomes pregnant, then we will get a doubt, is it going to cause any problem for the fetus? Usually it is in the all or none period. So if at all that effect is there, then generally it do not cause any problem to the fetus, and it is usually, we do not ask the patient to terminate, we do not ask them to terminate the pregnancy. Very often patient may be using drugs for postponement. So very often this is also, especially in Indian community, where they have some kind of festival or they have puja at home, wherein they do not want menstruation to happen and the drugs are being used. So these drugs are mostly progestrogens, and whenever they are being used, there is very often very often patient may be very often we find this, that patient may be pregnant. So she may miss her periods, she may not get her periods at all in when she's been using postponement medication. Again, it is not an indication for termination. So there will be some effect, but usually it do not cause any kind of major anomaly with the fetus. Then very often we use the drugs in infertility practice, which I'll be dealing again, like the drugs that are used in, for ovulation induction, and drugs, many, gonadotropins and all these things when we use in infertility practice and its effect. Okay, so I'll be talking on few of these again. There are medical disorders and gynecology. So very often we find that women may be having CNS disorders, like patient is on anti-epileptic medication. These may be enzyme inducers. So whenever we are using any kind of hormones, it may be for contraception or anything, the effect may not be as we expect it to be because of the use of enzyme inducers. So certain anti-epileptic medications are enzyme inducers. They may be on multiple drugs. So it is very important whenever we are dealing with, when we are using hormones. The hormones are like medroxyprogesterone acetate or norethisterone, which we use commonly for regularizing the cycle, for reducing the bleeding. So whenever we are using, we always think of this. We have to know if the patient is on any kind of these kind of enzyme inducers. Cardiovascular diseases and gynecology. Okay, so very often we do find the patient, this is very common, because patients on the blood thinners which are used, like anticoagulants which are used, like warfarin, the patient may be on heparin, so patient may be on clopidogrel, patient may be on aspirin. Is very often whenever they are on warfarin. Warfarin is often used whenever there is prosthetic heart valve. So whenever these patients on prosthetic heart valve, they are on warfarin for long term. And what you may think that with what problem they will present to gynecology. The patient is having heart disease, and with what problem will she present to the gynecological practice? Very often they come, whenever they are on anticoagulant, they present with bleeding, vaginal bleeding. So very often we find that these patients are having excessive bleeding and they report to gynecology. It is mostly because of their warfarin and not because of any gynecological abnormality. So what we usually tell them is to reduce the warfarin or whatever anticoagulant they are using as per the cardiologist. So we discuss with them and we help them reduce the bleeding with the use of reduction in these medications. So it is very important that we think in a different way, and we have to ask, because very often when they come with excessive bleeding, they will not give this history of intake of medication. So we have to ask them if they are on any kind of blood thinners which may be affecting the woman, and that is the reason why the patient may be having excessive bleeding. Then if the patient may also be having some kind of blood disorders, especially they may be having thrombocytopenia. That is when the woman is having a low platelet count, or thrombocythemia, where the woman is having dysfunctional platelet. So this is very often we get to see these kind of patients in when the young girl comes with heavy bleeding. So whenever they present with heavy bleeding, then we have to, especially just after menarche, when they present, then there may be excessive bleeding which may be related to these kind of platelet dysfunction, or they may be having some kind of bleeding disorders. So again, we need to investigate before we go ahead and treat these patients, because these thrombocytopenia will not be affected by any kind of drug or any medication that we give unless the platelet count is improved. So we have to think of improving the platelet count after knowing why the platelet count is less, or why the woman is bleeding. Is there any bleeding disorder that she is inherited? And that is what we have to first correct before we go ahead and treat the patient. Then the liver diseases. There are interactions with the liver diseases in patients, because whatever majority of we use in gynecology very few medications, okay, and mostly they are hormones. So all these hormones, it may be estrogen or progesterone or any kind of hormones, the gonadotropins, so whatever we use are all metabolized in the liver. So it is important for us to know if there is any problem with her liver, if the woman is suffering from liver disease. We do find patients with cirrhosis of liver presenting with excessive bleeding, and we need to treat this patient. So again, hormones are contraindicated. We have to think before we go ahead and give the treatment. Also, there are certain autoimmune conditions like antiphospholipid antibody syndrome, or it may be some autoimmune disorders like SLE, wherein there is increased risk of thrombosis. So the patient may be having some fibroid and she's presented, and we start giving her OC pill, then definitely it is going to cause harm to the patient, because OC pills increases the risk of thrombosis, especially in these women who are prone to thrombosis. So if they are suffering from any kind of autoimmune disorders, even a single dose of estradiol valerate can increase the risk of formation of a thrombi in the limbs. So it's very important that we know that this particular patient has any kind of problem or not before we go ahead and treat them with any hormones. And again, malignancy. Okay, so patient may be having very often in reproductive age, in the younger age group, we do find patients presenting with, I'm talking about non-gynecological malignancy, not the gynecological ones, non-gynecological malignancy, especially breast cancer. Patients will be on breast cancer and they may be on tamoxifen, and the effect of tamoxifen on the uterus. Okay, so there is increased endometrial thickness. They may be having excessive bleeding. Patient may present with postmenopausal bleeding as well. Again, patients with history of breast cancer, any hormones we cannot use. She may be wanting contraception. So again, we may have to think before we give any medication in patients with suspected malignancy. Lung disease, patient may be an asthmatic and we cannot use prostaglandins there. Okay, so there is increased risk of vasoconstriction in the lungs. So again, prostaglandins are to be avoided in these patients who are having lung disease. So we have to have an idea before we go ahead and treat the patient and give pharmacotherapy in gynecology. Common errors which can happen, which has happened also, I have seen in my own practice, though I have not done this, but I have seen sound alike and look alike drugs, mifepristone and mefigest. Okay, mifepristone is the drug which is an anti-progesterone. It is a progesterone receptor antagonist, which is used for as an abortifacient or even for induction of labor. So mefigest is a drug that is used, that is a micronized progesterone, which is used in pregnancy to for the continuation of pregnancy. So the by mistake, instead of the pharmacist has given, instead of mefigest, mifepristone to the patient, and patient has swallowed it. So once we give any of these abortifacient, we have to terminate pregnancy. So this conception was after an infertility conception. Because of the mismatch, he did not understand the prescription given by the doctor. He has given mifepristone. Okay, so so we had to terminate that pregnancy because of the use of an abortifacient. Then again, methotrexate and ectopic. In ectopic pregnancy, when we do not want to, ectopic pregnancy is where pregnancy is outside the uterus. Very often, that is about in 10 women, 100 early pregnancy, if we see, out of them 10 women have this ectopic pregnancy. Presence of pregnancy outside the uterus. It may be in the fallopian tube, it may most often in the fallopian tube or the ovary or cervix or anywhere outside the uterine cavity. It is called ectopic pregnancy. We have to rule out ectopic pregnancy before we give any medication for pregnant patient. So it is very important, over the counter medications for abortifacients should not be used, because there is increased risk of ectopic pregnancy rupture, which can be life threatening. Methotrexate is one such drug which is used for the management of ectopic pregnancy. The errors can be here if we have not diagnosed ectopic pregnancy, that is vice versa. One is missing the ectopic pregnancy, the other one is missing the intrauterine pregnancy. So methotrexate is used for ectopic pregnancy, and when we have wrongly diagnosed an ectopic pregnancy, we are going to cause problem for an intrauterine pregnancy, because methotrexate is anti-metabolite and should not be used. It's a absolute contraindication in pregnancy. So it's very important we have a right diagnosis before we go ahead and give any medication for the patient. So I have seen in my own practice women coming with ectopic pregnancy and rupture because of the use of over-the-counter abortifacients which are given by these patients. Use urine pregnancy test kit. They find that they are pregnant, go to the pharmacist and take the medication, and they have landed in the hospital with acute intra-abdominal bleed because of ectopic pregnancy. So it can be life threatening, and such women die if they are not treated at the right time and blood is not available, right surgery at the right time is not done. These patients die. So women have died because of the use of over-the-counter abortifacients. The other, the drug used for MTP is what I was telling, over-the-counter medication. And always we have to rule out ectopic pregnancy before we use any drug for termination of pregnancy. Emergency contraception is another problem. So emergency contraception is mostly safe. Okay, is mostly safe with respect to teratogenicity, but definitely not very safe as a contraceptive, because it just delays pregnancy, delays the ovulation. So if the patient continues to have unprotected intercourse even after the use of emergency contraception, then again there is possibility of pregnancy. So again, all these things are problems wherein whenever we are prescribing such medication, we do keep this in mind and we do tell the patient regarding these problems. So drugs and infertility, like clomifensitrate. This is what I was telling. Clomifensitrate is a common drug that is used for ovulation induction in those women who are not known to be ovulating regularly. So before we use either clomifensitrate or before we use letrozole, we have to be sure that she is not pregnant. We do find this in our own practice, that these women who come for infertility treatment, they say that they have just had little bit of spotting and not normal bleeding, and they start with this medication. I have seen that they are actually pregnant when they are using this drug. So we have to make sure that we have to give the right instruction for the patient, especially these infertile women, because they often think they're not pregnant. So That's the reason why we usually advise them that they should have a proper menstruation before they start this medication. If they have any slightest doubt, because if they have little bit of bleeding and not a normal menstruation, they still can be pregnant. Spotting is quite common in women who are pregnant. So they have to rule out pregnancy, do at least a urine pregnancy test before they start on this medication. So that is what we have to remember. Gonadotropin injections, again the problems of gonadotropin injections, like these are the drugs that are used in infertility treatment. So they are often used in patients who don't ovulate with clomiphene or letrozole, and then we use either purified FSH or recombinant FSH and help the patients ovulate. So the problem with these drugs again is ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome. So especially when we are using this, because this polycystic ovarian syndrome is a category of women who do not respond for the routine clomiphene or letrozole. So in them, whenever we are using gonadotropins, again, they are very dangerous because they will cause hyperstimulation of the ovary. So ovaries respond in excess. So because of which it can be lead to a life-threatening situation called ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome. So there has been mortality reported if not treated at the right time. Treatment, of course, improves, and there is 100% cure for this ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome. It is the excessive response of the ovary for the use of the gonadotropins. And there is excessive accumulation of fluid in the extravascular space. This is mainly because of the substance called VEGF, or vascular endothelial growth factor, which is responsible for accumulation of the fluid outside the blood vessel. So there will be ascites, pleural effusion, and the ascites may be so much that the patient may go in for acute renal failure. And most often they require paracentesis, or even they require pleural tapping. Again, FSH, I told you. Then HCG, human chorionic gonadotropin, is another culprit, which is actually responsible for development of ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome, especially whenever we are using this in infertility treatment in IVF cycles. So after using this HCG, very often they go in for OHSS. HMG is the other drug that we commonly use in infertility practice, especially for those women who are having lesser amount of eggs in the ovary. So for them, we prefer to give human menopausal gonadotropin. There are impurities with this human menopausal gonadotropin because it is obtained from the urine of the post-menopausal women. The FSH and LH are in equal amount and they are obtained from the urine of the menopausal women. Hence, there are impurities with this, and that is the reason why there is increased risk of OHSS whenever we are using HMG. Then hormonal agents and gynecological practice, norethistyrone acetate, which is a very popular drug, very old drug, which is a very potent progesterone used for halting the menstruation. Again, this should be carefully used in those women who are at risk of thrombosis, who are having liver diseases. So in these women, we have to be very careful when we are using norethistyrone acetate, and it is a very potent hemostatic agent. So it is often used to stop bleeding whenever the patients or whenever the woman present with excessive bleeding. Then medroxyprogesterone acetate, which is another drug which is often used for regularizing the cycle. Again, it is quite safe. Majority of the women, safety profile is very good, except in those women who are having liver diseases. So in those women, we have to be little careful when we're using medroxyprogesterone acetate. Also, these progesterones in those women who have risk of breast cancer. Progesterone is not at all safe for breast, but it is very good for the endometrium. Dipomedroxyprogesterone acetate is again the drug which is commonly used. It is a contraceptive actually, but it is popular as a because of its non-contraceptive uses, which is often used in whenever there is endometrial hyperplasia, whenever there is diagnosis of endometrial hyperplasia, or even in cases of endometriosis, it is often used for its non-contraceptive benefit. The problem with this drug again is the when used for long term reduces the bone mineral density, and there is increased risk of osteoporosis. Micronized progesterogens, again these are the ones which are used often in pregnancy, and it is known to be very safe in pregnant women. Very mild drug. Danazol is a potent derivative of testosterone, and it is very potent drug, specially used in patients who have severe dysmenorrhea due to endometriosis as a last resort, not as a first line drug, but as a last line drug because of its bad side effects, especially androgenic side effects. So there is increased risk of facial hair growth and change in the voice. So male like hair growth, all these things are a problem with danazol. Hence, it is a last resort drug to be used. Then use of HRT, the drugs that are used, quite safe they are. Hormone replacement, the vaginal ones are quite safe. That is Evolon cream in those women who have vaginal problem, and the equine estrogen, conjugated equine estrogen. Nowadays, the conjugated equine estrogen has been replaced by estradiol valerate, which is popular and has a good safety profile as a HRT. So menopausal symptoms, it is good for the bone and not very good for the uterus. Hence, we need to give supplementation with progesterone whenever we are using HRT as a hormone replacement therapy. Tamoxifen is another drug which is common encountered, used for breast cancer patients. So they will be on long-term tamoxifen, and it can cause endometrial hyperplasia. So we usually we evaluate the endometrium whenever the patient is on tamoxifen on long term. Next is the use of hemostatic drugs. So hemostatic drugs like tranexamic acid, very often we use this. This is as a to whenever the patient comes with excessive bleeding, we will be putting them on tranexamic acid. But long-term use of tranexamic acid for more than 5 days, we do not give, because there is increased risk for development of thrombosis, because they promote thrombosis. Hence, there may be thrombosis elsewhere in the body also. So whenever there is at-risk patients who are already having some kind of cardiovascular disease and they are at risk, or they're having cerebrovascular diseases who are known who had history of thrombosis in the past, they should not be given with tranexamic acid. So it becomes very dicey situation for us in treating these women who are already having some medical disorder on medication and they come with heavy bleeding. So we have to be very careful using this drug. Mefenamic acid is quite safe anti-inflammatory drug, and however, it should not be used in those women who are having liver diseases. So if a patient is having fever or viral illness and has some kind of liver problem, then mefenamic acid to be avoided. Anti-cancer medications, and in gynecology, very often we used all kinds of anti-cancer medications like cisplatin, carboplatin, all these things, especially in carcinoma cervix, carcinoma endometrium we use, and also in carcinoma of the ovary. So whenever we are using, it is mostly for specific indications. So we know that patient is having malignancy and that needs to be treated. Only then we go ahead and give this drug. Methotrexate is a very good, it's an anti-metabolite. It is not only used in patients who are having malignancy, but also in non-malignancy conditions, like as I mentioned earlier, in ectopic pregnancy, we do use methotrexate. So it is weekly, usually one dose is given, and that is that will help in regressing the ectopic pregnancy. Not only that, it is also quite it is a drug of choice in gestational trophoblastic disease when they suffer with molar pregnancy, when the uterus is filled with grape like structures. Instead of normal pregnancy, they have an abnormal pregnancy. So in these patients, we do monitor them for a long duration, and wherein we know that they have persistent gestational trophoblastic disease, then we have to give them and treat them with methotrexate. So next is antibiotics, which are quite common, the drugs that are used in gynecological practice. So antifungals, like these are the very often used over the counter medication, and they are quite safe, especially for vaginal candidiasis, vulval candidiasis. Antifungal, that like clotrimazole ointment, gel, cream, tablets are available, which are used, and they are quite safe. They are also used in during pregnancy, will not cause much of the problem. Imidazole derivatives like metronidazole, commonly used for bacterial vaginosis, and it is not it should not be given in first trimester. It is not a safe drug and should be avoided in first trimester. Otherwise, it can be given. Aminoglycosides, again, it is a popular drug in gynecology because of its good gram-negative coverage. So we deal with most often gram-negative and anaerobic organisms. So the drugs which are used are these aminoglycosides. So, but we should rule out pregnancy. Sometimes we do encounter women with urinary tract infection and in pregnancy, wherein they are responsible only for aminoglycosides. And that becomes a very tough situation for us, because aminoglycosides are known to cause fetal nephrotoxicity and also fetal ototoxicity. So we should not be using them in first trimester. So we have to rule out pregnancy before we give these, especially in women who are young and in the reproductive age group, not using any contraception and having a doubt regarding pregnancy. Cephalosporins are quite safe, and if at all we want to use any kind of antibiotic in pregnancy, we choose to give cephalosporins and not any other medication. So first generation, second generation, third generation, any of these can be given, and they are quite safe and are not known to be having any kind of teratogenic effect. And they are the drugs also used in gynecological practice as well, especially the second and the third generation, especially the third generation cephalosporin, because of its good gram-negative coverage. Next is the clindamycin, a popular drug used for pelvic inflammatory disease. Clindamycin is also given in pregnancy whenever there is suspicion of streptococcal infection, and it is a very good drug, especially in the second trimester. Any medication, any antibiotic, we avoid in first trimester. It is only in second trimester that we are quite comfortable in using any kind of antibiotics in pregnancy. Doxycycline, very old drug, very potent drug, and quite popular drug in gynecology. Always rule out pregnancy, because doxycycline is a teratogenic drug and cause problem with the fetal bone and teeth. So we have to know that, and it is a popular drug for pelvic inflammatory disease. It is a very good drug, and it is quite effective in those patients who are having mild pelvic inflammatory disease. Contraceptives and in gynecological practice. So the hormonal and non-hormonal methods are available. Oral and injectable ones, IUCDs, all these are available. Intrauterine system like Mirena is available. Mirena is a very safe drug. It is an intrauterine device which delivers progesterone within the uterine cavity. And whenever we have a trouble with the use of oral medication because of its systemic effect, we prefer to use Mirena. So it is an intrauterine system, hence it is the systemic effect is very less and local effect is more, and it is quite popular. So if we have any doubt regarding the use of progesterone, oral progesterone, because of its systemic effect, we don't know if it may affect the liver disease or heart or anything. In such situation, or thrombotic effect, in order to avoid all these things, we use intrauterine device, not only as a contraception, and it is very popular as a in reducing the menstrual blood loss. Then vaccine in gynecological practice. So we know that the commonest gynecological malignancy is carcinoma cervix, and it is known, it is because of HPV, that is human papilloma virus, especially 16, 19, 33 and 32, 16 and 18, which is a causative organism for a majority of the time, the carcinoma cervix. And in India, this is the one of the leading cancer death, and Europe and abroad have reduced with the cancer of cervix and vagina due to improved screening and use of vaccine. So the vaccine that is used here is the HPV vaccine, which is Gardasil or Cervarix. So either 16, 18 or the quadrivalent vaccine, which is being used. Whenever this will help in reduction of the HPV infection. So definitely it will, whenever the HPV infection is reduced, that is the vaginal HPV infection is reduced, then the risk of cancer cervix is also quite less. So that is why in Western countries, HPV vaccine is very popular, though not so much in India. It is not being promoted that much in India, probably because of its cost. So the summarizing, we have to the understanding of the drugs whenever we are using the pharmacotherapy in gynecology, though in gynecological practice the amount or the number of drugs that we use is very limited and the conditions are also very limited, but we have to have a good idea because it is very specific. We will want to act it on that particular area only, but can have systemic effects. So we have to have a very good idea about the drug that we use. Patient profile is very important. Every patient is different. So her medical disease, her medical condition, we have to have an idea. What medication already she is on, the drug interaction, we should have an idea. Then the right drug to right patient, because this is most important. And we have to have an individualized treatment for these patients. And we have to avoid medication error. So it is very important that we have a right diagnosis for the patient before we treat it, because all these drugs can have a problem and can have multiple interactions, can have multiple effects on the patient. So it is very important for us to understand all these things before we go ahead and treat in gynecological practice. Thank you for your patient hearing. I would like to have questions if you have.
Shall I start? Thank you so much, ma'am, for this wonderful session. You have simplified the criteria for the treatment of obstetrics and gynecology. Ma'am has also given us overview of FDA classification, all the possible medical disorders like renal, lung, etc., where ma'am has covered with its possible choice of therapy. She exemplified look-alike sound like drug and contraceptive use, and also explained the indication of hormone replacement therapy, hemostatic drug, anti-cancer drugs, vaccines used in gynecology. I would like to thank you again, ma'am, for covering such a wide topic in this short period of time. And thank you so much for sparing your valuable time. Thank you so much. Now session is open for question answers.
Hello, ma'am. I had a doubt, ma'am.
Yes. Yeah.
Ma'am, what is the prevalence of usage of hormone therapy in women post menopause?
you mean to say HRT, hormone replacement therapy?
Yes, ma'am.
Prevalence means use of them. How many people are using
Yes,
HRT?
ma'am.
It is
Yes.
very less. It may be in India, probably it is less than 10% of the women.
Okay, ma'am.
Because very often either they are scared to use the hormone replacement therapy, the drugs, either patients are scared, or they are people are not prescribing because of they are already having some kind of medical disorders. Like hormone replacement therapy is often used in postmenopausal women, and it is already they are having hypertension, they are already having some kind of other medical diseases, so use may be contraindicated. So it is very less number will be on this HRT, but HRT is very popular in younger women who have attained menopause earlier. So in them, it is quite popular. And I can say if there is premature menopause, almost say 90% of the women use this HRT.
Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am,
Yes.
also I wanted to ask that what about the medications women take to solve the menopausal issues?
You mean to say like isoflavones, calcium, and all those things?
Yeah, ma'am.
Yeah, those are safe, and that is very commonly used. They do not have no major effect, also no major. That is why there is no major side effect as well. Any drug to be having side effects should have effects also. So the isoflavones hardly have any effect, hence there are no majority do not have major side effects as well.
Ma'am, and those who undergo heavy bleeding or clots while menopause, they also consume medications, right?
No. For them, we have to be very careful before we give, because it is postmenopausal bleeding. You mean to say, right?
Yes,
Is the
ma'am.
question on postmenopausal bleeding?
Postmenopausal and while,
After menopause, if they start bleeding,
yeah, ma'am.
that we should be very careful. We should not give them any medication unless we know why the patient is bleeding, because postmenopausal bleeding is due to a cause. A woman after stops menstruating should not bleed. So menstruation stops, say, by the age of, in India, by 40 to 45, majority there is stoppage of menstruation. So maximum up to 55, we allow a menstruation may happen. But once it is stopped, say after 6 months or 1 year of no menstruation, if a woman starts menstruating, we have to evaluate. It is majority of the time, 80% of the time, because of malignancy. So we have to know if there is any cervical cancer or endometrial cancer before we treat. We should not treat them without evaluation.
Ma'am, I have seen a case where the patient is not the cancerous or no meningeal possibility. So, but still the patient is bleeding. What is the possible reason for that?
Yeah, postmenopausal bleeding may be because of cervical cancer. It may be because of endometrial cancer. It may be because of an hormone producing tumor in the ovary. It may be because of vaginal cancer. It may be rarely because of the use of HRT. Patient is already on HRT, hormone replacement therapy, so she will have menstruation. It may be because of atrophic vaginitis. It may also be because of atrophic endometritis. So if there is nothing, if the malignancy is all ruled out, then only we say it may be because of atrophic vaginitis or even atrophic endometritis. Because of the thinned down endometrium, because of the atrophy, they will have bleeding. But we will know who are the patients who are actually having atrophic endometritis and who are having malignancy. Rarely it may be because of hormone producing tumor, which are missed by all investigations. Very often we find in a year at least 2 or 3 patients we see who actually present with postmenopausal bleeding. We evaluate cervix, endometrium, everything is fine, but there is a small little tissue in the ovary which is producing hormone, and it has to be treated, and these patients require hysterectomy.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. I request all the delegates to kindly switch on their videos for a photo session.
Thank you, Anjali ma'am, for accepting our invitation. So within
Thank you,
short
Manju.
time period, you have explained all the drugs in the gynecology, obstetric gynecology. You have not missed out even a single drug, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
So much, ma'am. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, ma'am. With this, we have come to the end of the end of today's QIP sessions. I believe all the sessions have helped everyone. And let's meet tomorrow at 10 for another great sessions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.